my senses seem to drift as I look out on the sea. I think of the day when I'll be free to sail away, and I'll go to see the places I've been to in my I build a boat of wood, shape it carefully, and it'll be good. Come with me if you could, and we'll sail away.
For as long as men have been sailing ships, they have shared a dream. They have all imagined, romanticized the ultimate dream of going to sea. And so two men dreamed of sailing the waters of Baja, Mexico, a vast frontier offering miles of untouched coastline and bountiful seas. The 23-foot trailerable sailboat, built by Aquarius, would be towed from her home port in Los Angeles, California, 300 miles to the tiny village of San Felipe. From there, the boat, christened Serendipity, would be sailed 550 miles to the port city of La Paz, a distance easily attainable for a trip limited to a month. Now that the destination site had been chosen, the months of preparation would begin. The small boat would have to be outfitted and supplied to be self-sufficient for 30 days. She would have to be equipped for any unexpected emergencies, yet be comfortable, safe, and well-stocked for a pleasurable cruise. With all preparations completed, Serendipity began the first leg of her journey, and the crew finally got their first look at this new frontier. Only in the last few years has Baja seen the progress needed to make it a productive land. With the completion of Mexico's Highway 1, Baja has entered the 20th century. San Felipe, famous for its extremely low tides, is a favorite site for fishermen, both sport and commercial. Unfortunately, the van and boat arrived at the lowest tide of the day, so the crew enlisted the help of local Mexicans. These friendly people seemed to enjoy offering their assistance as much as Serendipity's crew was grateful for it. Military vehicles, replicas out of the past, pulled the sailboat across the wide sandy beach and out into the shallow water. The retractable centerboard, which would prove to be a lifesaver many times on this cruise, was a necessity for the launching. Spending the first night in San Felipe Bay, the two sailors anxiously awaited the morning sun, the beginning of the day when their dreams would become reality. Serendipity is a word derived from The Three Princes of Serendip, a fairy tale written by Horace Walpole over 100 years ago. The word denotes the experience of creating fortunate yet unforeseen discoveries by accident. The two sailors hoped to make their journey worthy of such a name.
The Sea of Cortez truly is unique. We learned to read our charts more carefully after we ran aground 7 miles out to sea on our very first night. What we encountered was a sandy shoal, and we happened to hit it at low tide. So we just threw out an anchor and had dinner, and waited for the tide to come in enough to allow us to cross.
We couldn't have had a more beautiful start. A hot, cloudless blue sky covering a green sea. Just enough breeze to move the boat, and on that first night out, a full moon rising just at sunset.
A navigational error due to strong prevailing currents and unfamiliar waters caused Serendipity to overrun Willard Bay. So she dropped anchor in a small cove and waited for sunrise to start their 20-mile backtracking journey. After pulling anchor, Serendipity headed back to Willard Bay. The weather they had been experiencing grew increasingly worse. The sky was a deceiving blue, and the sun shone brightly on the building waves. The wind gauge kept rising, 20, 25, 30 knots. They say there is no place lonelier than on a sailboat in the middle of a storm. Muscles begin to ache from the tension of the listing boat, and hands become raw from clutching the lines and working the sheets. And just when a sailor begins to wonder about his own endurance as well as that of his boat, he sights his destination and he can finally give in to his exhaustion. Willard Bay, an all-weather anchorage, offered shelter to wait out the heavy winds. A fishing boat with 2 Americans has also found refuge in this bay. Serendipity is invited to raft up to the 28-foot cabin cruiser for better stability, and the crews joined one another to share stories and wait for calmer weather. Papa Fernandez, a native of Baja and overseer of the small community, furnished the sailors with the needed gasoline. The only American citizen of Willard Bay is Harry Kemp, who was eager to share the story of the statue seen high above Kemp's home. In the late 1950s, a young man came to the village seeking a group of friends living in the area. After being directed to their camp, he asked to use the town's generator. It was later discovered he had collected pieces of scrap metal and built a huge replica of the saint found in this hilltop shrine. 10 years later, both Papa Fernandez and Harry Kemp received letters from the New York Times inquiring about a metal sculpture lost in Baja. Shortly before his death, the artist, Ron Boise, had become famous for his religious art. The shimmering statue stands today overlooking the sea, seeming to send its blessing to all the sailors leaving Willard Bay. Hoping the heavy winds were behind them, the sailors charted their course for Baja de Los Angeles. The days were becoming warmer, and the gentle breeze promised mild sailing days ahead. A fortunate find for a fisherman is spotting a fish pileup. Flocks of birds can be seen swarming over the schools of fish. It was no surprise to sight a herd of frolicking whales taking advantage of the plentiful menu. The fishermen and whales both know the small fish have become not only prey for the birds, but to the schools of larger sea life feeding below. Serendipity arrived at Bahia de Los Angeles, a village to get supplies. The small community has been a favorite landing spot for fly-in fishermen. Since the new road opened, the village has now become popular with drive-in tourists as well. The comical pelicans provided an afternoon's entertainment as they gracefully practiced their diving skill. One of the village's motel restaurants, the Diaz Resort, is run by Mama Diaz and her family. The dining room offers a hearty family-style dinner of Baja's famous tortuga, turtle steak. But their visit to this friendly village was cut short because of weather conditions. The gusty winds were causing an uncomfortable anchorage in the bay, so the sailors decided to seek a more protected harbor. A day's sail brought Serendipity to a small cove called Alicron. Our two sailors soon had their first meeting with Mexican pescadores, fishermen. The two young men had come looking for three friends, 4 days overdue in returning home. The Americans joined in their search, but to no avail. Later in the afternoon, the pescadores were invited aboard to join in dinner and to share stories of their adventures. The Americans' limited Spanish and the fishermen's inability to speak English did not hinder the communication between these newfound friends. The next morning, Serendipity's crew awoke to find the two young fishermen and their boat gone. But in its place was a smaller boat with one fisherman asking for agua. Water was brought ashore and given to the man, who in turn took it down the beach to his two companions. It was then the sailors realized these were the three lost pescadores who had made their way to the cove during the night. They had indeed run into trouble when the larger of their two boats hit a reef and sank. They had been forced to try and make their way home in a 14-foot outboard motorboat. They had no gas left and were still 25 miles from home. The men were weary from exposure, having no water and nothing to eat in 4 days, except wild cactus apples they had gathered. Their greatest need was gasoline, and though Serendipity carried only a small amount, it was willingly shared. The pescadores were then invited aboard for hot coffee and breakfast. These hard-working fishermen represent the heart of Baja. Sensitive, generous people who live their entire lives dependent upon the land and the sea. Yet all these men, from different countries, different cultures, were brought together through the gift of giving and a handshake that ties the bond of friendship. Thanksgiving Day marks Serendipity's arrival at Santa Rosalia, the largest port since San Felipe. This mining town was visible from 20 miles due to the factory's ever-smoking stack. town is basically industrial, offering few typical tourist attractions. The harbor, devoid of other pleasure crafts, became Serendipity's home while her crew took time to explore. After several days in Santa Rosalia, Serendipity set sail for Mulege, a small tropical paradise located along the shores of the Santa Rosalia River. Their arrival, unfortunately, coincided with the lowest tide of the year. But once again, the retractable centerboard allowed Serendipity to navigate the shallow water, as well as rest herself on the river bed. Anchored in this serene setting, it was hard to believe this lush, green oasis was part of the barren Baja coast. The tranquil lifestyle seemed untouched by modern society's hectic pace. The children of Mexico were the sailors' continual favorites.
The children of Baja were so alive and gregarious. As we visited the towns, our cameras would immediately introduce us as tourists. The children would then either begin to perform for us or become very shy. Although we didn't speak Spanish very well, we were able to communicate with no trouble by using that universal language, a smile.
Leaving Mulege in calm weather gave the crew a chance for some fishing, a luxury they could not afford while fighting heavy seas and trying to meet their schedule. Landing a big one is always a thrill, especially knowing this beautiful bonita would be dinner that night. The sailboat made a quick stop at Loreto, the oldest permanent settlement in Baja. After leaving Loreto, the crew sailed on to Puerto Escondido, arriving after dark. Serendipity spent her 17th night at sea in one of the most beautiful and well-protected bays on the Baja coast. The peaceful harbor creates a fantasy-like seascape as dawn breaks. Silently, the vagabundo tends his nets and prepares for the day's catch. Except for the slight ripple as the longboats make their way across the harbor, there is little to disturb the reflection of the mirror image on the still water. is not easy for a sailor to leave Puerto Escondido, but the reality of a schedule beckons their return to sea. Spending a night in Bahia Tambobiche gave the crew another chance meeting with a Mexican pescador when he rowed out to Serendipity offering fish as a token of friendship. The fisherman, Emmanuel Iguera, was invited aboard to share dinner and stories about this area of Baja where he lived and worked.
Later, in thinking about Emmanuel and his family, I realized that we lose something by living in the city. Emmanuel helped me understand that. Almost all the Mexican people that we met seemed to have that quality of being warm and open, but with Emmanuel it shone like a jewel.
Another afternoon's catch was the delicious dorado, said to be the best tasting fish in the ocean. Sailing into La Paz Harbor, their final destination point, was quite a contrast from the small towns and villages Serendipity had seen during the trip. This harbor has long been a favorite anchorage for yachts from around the world that would rest here before continuing their journeys both east and west. Automobile passenger ferries provide service to mainland Mexico, and the jet capacity airport offers flights to the United States, Mexico, and other parts of Baja. This old, picturesque city is having a hard time maintaining its quiet charm due to the increasing number of tourists. Now, with modern facilities, the new has combined with the old, offering something for everyone. Having reached the end of her journey, Serendipity was made ready to be towed home on Mexico's new Highway 1. The road proved to be well maintained, weaving its way through deserts and mountains. The two sailors could now view this frontier land from a different perspective. There was more time to explore the old missions and recall the unique history of these early settlements. The ever-changing scenery made the 1,000-mile trip to the border pass quickly. The two-lane highway is an extreme contrast to the narrow dirt trail seen winding its way through this huge valley. Poor road conditions and rough terrain had kept visitors out of this country for many years. But now, tourists can become acquainted with this beautiful peninsula, thanks to the safety provided by the new paved highway. truly remarkable area, a land of expansive deserts, rugged mountains, palm oases, and untouched beaches. Fond memories of a people who give more than they take and willingly share their bounty and friendship, as they had with the two men who sailed in their waters. Their journey was over, their dream a reality. But for men who dare to dream, there is always tomorrow, a day to sail away.